Let's take a closer look at using DHCP inside the vCloud hybrid service. We're already logged into our dedicated instance, so let's start by clicking on our SharePoint Virtual Data Center. On the Networks tab, notice that we have two networks, a default isolated network and a default routed network. These were both created automatically when we chose to have two IP addresses for our virtual data center. Let's drop back into vCloud Director to manage the advanced properties of DHCP. First, take a look at the settings for the isolated network. DHCP is our only option, and it is enabled by default. By clicking Edit, you can see that the pool is enabled. A default IP range from .101 to .254 has been assigned, and default and max lease times have been set. If we wanted to, we could shorten or extend the pool. For example, say we wanted to keep this range for virtual machines, but also wanted to create static routes to additional virtual machines. We could take the top 50 addresses off and use those for static routing. We also could delete this range entirely and change it to something else. Now let's move to the settings for the default routed network. Notice that DHCP is not enabled by default. Before we add a DHCP pool, we first need to find out what range is valid. Our gateway address is 192.168.109. Going into Properties, you can see on the Network Specification tab that the range goes from .2 to .100. This is a static pool, so when a virtual machine is set to a static IP address or IP pool, the vCloud hybrid service is going to use VMware tools to push an IP address that is based on this range. This means that VMware tools must be installed. But what if we want a virtual machine that doesn't have VMware tools installed to participate on this network? This is where we add the DHCP pool. Here, we'll use .101 to .125 for the range. Let's go back to Configure Services, and on the DHCP tab, we select Enable DHCP and click Add. We then enter the IP range for our DHCP pool and click OK. Now that we've created the DHCP role, any virtual machines that don't have VMware tools installed can be attached to the network simply by setting them to DHCP. Finally, it is important to be aware of where you are configuring DHCP. For example, if we move to the Edge Gateways tab and go into Edge Gateway Services, the default routed network appears, but not the default isolated network. From here, we can only configure the DHCP range for the routed network. This is because the isolated network isn't connected to the Edge Gateway at all. If we want to edit the DHCP range for the isolated network, we have to do it from the Org VDC Networks tab. From here, we can go into Configure Services and modify the range. Again, note that for the routed network, we can access its DHCP range from either the Org VDC Networks tab or the Edge Gateways tab. With that final note, you now know the key points for using DHCP inside the vCloud hybrid service.